Let's turn it around. Short squeeze loading in crypto. The Michael Saylor narrative picked up by dumb money like Peter Schiff. Therefore, isn't it time to go the other way? Isn't it time to say, wait a minute, did you know about July returns in the stock market? I'm sorry, July returns for Bitcoin? Did you know that if there's a good July, something else happens? Well, you don't want to go anywhere and stay tuned for that. Plus, why Solana and Stellar? Why XRP? What do the charts look like? Has the Michael Saylor narrative ended for now? What happens if you just get this void where you have the 250th anniversary of America, NASDAQ does meh, and Bitcoin and crypto can catch up? Want to hear more? Don't go anywhere. This is the Market Update. I am your host, Bill Noble. If you need a roadmap in crypto, subscribe to the channel. Turn on alerts so you know when we're going live or making videos with our friends from Stormrake. And of course, if you like the content, hit the like button. Okay, so my turnaround here started with one of our members, Big Daddy Crypto, going, can we start talking about Hyperliquid? And I was like, yeah, we can. And then Peter Schiff and the media start picking up on this negative Bitcoin narrative. And I'm like, I think it's time to go the other way. I think it's time to squeeze everybody out. So here he is, Mr. Whiny Pants. Can't get along. We like the gold guys. They don't like us. The current yield on STRC, that's Michael Saylor's instrument for borrowing a lot of money. That means to get the price back up to 100, strategy must raise the dividend from 12 to 15%. That will increase its cash burn, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you've heard about this. We talked about it ad nauseum. Saylor should sell Bitcoin and end all this, but he promised he would sell Bitcoin if he needed to. And is that enough? It wasn't enough yesterday, but now look at this. Now everybody is slashing their Bitcoin price target. This always happens at the end of a move, right? In other words, the market moves and then all the investment banks have to change their targets, right? Because they feel embarrassed that they were super bullish. What do you know? Time to go the other way. And of course, you have Zero Hedge publishing, is Bitcoin broken or bottoming? And then you have all these, charts talking about prediction markets and pricing in a 66% probability of 50K. And, you may have 50K at some point, but maybe not today. Maybe not this quarter. How about them apples? We'll go over the historical data, so you can't possibly miss that. So there are some trend lines here. We're going to go over the quarterly chart. Bitcoin has been going down as the dollar has been going up. We'll look at the dollar monthly chart. Obviously, NASDAQ has done nothing but go up as Bitcoin has done nothing but go down. We know that. Okay. And silver and Bitcoin have been falling together. That's interesting. We'll look at the silver chart. The bottom line is everybody just got negative. So they watched the price action. They watched the Saylor drama. Okay. All the services like TikTok and all these places, Saylor started trending. This is kind of like yesterday, where, I got like 3 times the normal amount of views on, Saylor doom and gloom stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go the other way. Let's load a squeeze, not just for today, but let's load it for the whole month. Let's just squeeze them all out all month long and see where that gets us. Don't believe me? Okay, well, we'll look at the charts. We'll also discuss how Stellar and Solana, which even with the Saylor doom and gloom, I still liked. Still like it, right? I mean, those charts never really broke down. Matter of fact, if anything, they were showing a breakout could occur. And, XRP doesn't look terrible either. Now, what got all this started was this headline. Okay, the lizards over at Meta just exposed the first crack in the AI Capex boom. Okay, Meta announced it is going to build a cloud business to sell its excess AI compute. Let's translate that into English. So all the FOMO in NASDAQ, all the FOMO in semiconductor chips is based on the assumption that Silicon Valley or the world doesn't have enough computing power to run AI, and they will pay any price for chips, data centers, you name it. But wait a minute. Meta is leasing out its computing power? I thought there wasn't enough computing power. Why are they leasing it out? Huh. That's kind of funny, don't you think? Now, semiconductor stocks are down 5%, whatever. Okay, NASDAQ is down a little bit, whatever. But that leads me to a very important question. Ready? What is the next big trade? What is the next trade? Is it semis? Is it NASDAQ? Is somebody waking up over there and figuring that, the AI world is priced for perfection in equities, and it's priced like it doesn't exist in crypto? Bitcoin, the only thing AI can't make more of. You've heard this. Absolutely no interest. Everyone focused on one leveraged player. That's Saylor. So not a leveraged system like 2022. Everybody's just focused on one leveraged guy. He's got some problems, but I mean, his problems would go away if Bitcoin went to, I don't know, 85K. Or his problems might be solved if you just had stable to rising Bitcoin instead of a cascade to 50. Because right now, so many people are talking about 40 and 50. I discussed it in an elaborate piece in Patreon where I said, if this gets out of hand, this is where it can go. Like, this is what can happen if the Saylor problem becomes big. But maybe everyone now expects a Saylor problem, so it doesn't happen until October. Maybe it happens much later. Or maybe there's a big rally in August that then fizzles, something like that. But it's not the time to do it now. And if you believe that, we have tons of altcoin alpha in the YouTube member area. I mean, we are just picking them and putting them out there like, what's next? And of course, when you go to trade, you want to use our friends at Stormrake, right? Not Coinbase, not Gemini, not ridiculous fees, actual human beings. So, please check these guys out because their alpha, where they've been talking about this thing being closer to the end than the beginning and all the bids that they had at 60K, for all the drama, for all the negativity, Bitcoin didn't really fall that far below 60. Interesting, right? And we'll look at the quarterly chart in a minute. Shizzy with a super chat, we appreciate that, says, why would a bank or any other institution use XRP when they can use stable coins on Solana? I want to be bullish on XRP, but is it just a meme coin now? Okay, well, I mean, that's the XRP narrative at $1. And then, the XRP narrative at $3 is, it's going to be used as a currency. So I think the case for XRP comes down to XRP ledger, right? In other words, if you get RWA and stablecoins running on XRP ledger, that could create demand for XRP. I also think Ripple is an XRP treasury company that if some company wanted to get involved in crypto, they could buy Ripple and instantly have their own money. So is that XRP $10 today? No. But is there a reason to buy XRP at $1? Yeah, it's XRP ledger. You know, the problem with XRP is that it's so universally owned by retail that every time it goes up, you have bag holders exiting. And that's what, you know, frankly, sucks because everybody goes to get out every time it rallies. Now, what is happening in XRP is that everyone's going the other way. In other words, there's been a bid in XRP close to $1 and it didn't fall below $1. You know, you kind of have to be grateful for the small things, I think. So, I mean, if you look, you know, if we look at XRP on a 4-hour chart, we're going to see a couple of different things. The first thing you're going to see, I'm just getting it all sorted out here, is that XRP was in one of these Lux Algo cones. That's what I call them. And this is a 4-hour chart, and XRP broke out today, right? And then on like the signals part of Lux Algo, there was a buy signal over here on the 27th. And guess what? Despite the slump, that buy signal for the moment is still in play. It never flipped. So can XRP go from its discount zone at $1 and go up to $1.15, which is equilibrium? Why not? I mean, Stellar looks okay to me. Solana looks really good. I mean, we're going to go into all of that. But I mean, XRP doesn't have to be a meme coin. It doesn't. I mean, yes, it's a symbol of crypto retail. But XRP Ledger has got stuff running on it. And if you think you're going to run securities tokens, stable coins, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars is going to eventually wind up on crypto. I mean, Solana is running a huge chunk of tokenized stock trading. What? It's just going to be Solana? Yeah, you're not going to have any of that on any other layer one? I think that's ridiculous. I think the whole concept of a layer one period has been absent from the market's mind, right? Debasement picked up STRC at 75. Exactly. In other words, there was bargain discount shopping. I brought STRC up to Toby when it was at 74. She's like, oh, great, shopping. You know, if this Michael Saylor issue is either a non-issue or doesn't show up until later, you have a very, very interesting trade there where you got shorts in MicroStrategy, everybody out of Bitcoin. Oh, by the way, right? Bitcoin ETF outflows, they all puked it last month. Retail, institutions, retail bought the high in semis, dumped gold, dumped Bitcoin. I mean, you couldn't cook it up for a better squeeze or reversal than that, particularly since it occurred at the end of a quarter. Specifically, this being July 1, on the last day of June, sure, you had them buying the winners and puking the losers. That's why Bitcoin was down 3%. Everybody was exiting the Bitcoin ETF. And then once everybody did what they had to do, oh, wow, Bitcoin's up 2% now, above 60. Above 60. Why is that a big deal? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, because when you start looking at like a long-term chart of Bitcoin, I mean, you know, there's a pretty big level here. There's the 21 quarter moving average. It's a quarterly chart. Each bar represents 3 months. Obviously, that's not good. But, there's a Fibonacci circle point, and there's a big moving average. And if you think about it, like if you look at the closing candle of the 2021 top candle, and you look at the opening of like the big reversal candle that happened at the top in 2021. This is when Bitcoin went from 30 to 60 and then went back from 60 to 30. That's the Bored Ape top. You'll notice that level where it closed one quarter and opened the next quarter before it went down was like 58.7. What was the low yesterday? The low yesterday was 58 even. The close was 58.5 for the quarter. Okay. And then guess what? Bitcoin is doing better. Bitcoin held this key candlestick level. So, okay. Yeah, we have an over leveraged player in the system. And I know I covered it from soup to nuts, right? I maybe over covered it, but whatever. If you look at Bitcoin on a 4-hour chart, right, squeezing this in for our friends at TikTok, okay, you got another one of these Lux Algo cones, which is, super helpful to have that. The link is down below. And you start breaking out here, you're coming off the discount zone on the 4-hour chart. I mean, it doesn't get any more oversold. And it's been down here for 4 days or 5 days. It's been down here, just sitting there. This is kind of a double bottom. And I don't see why you couldn't go up to the premium zone on the 4-hour chart, which is 67. Now, that's not an earth-shattering rally, but considering that 66% of the people expect it to go to 50, which, that can be later. That can be later. What happens if they spend the next couple of, you ready for this, months squeezing people out? Now you're like, okay, Bill, that can't possibly happen. There's no way, okay, that you can squeeze people out in July and have the market sort of hold. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Because, if you look at the data, like if you look at this very old-fashioned stuff that I use, right, to look at what happens if there's positive performance in July. Okay, so there's June 30th, and then this computer program measures BTC plus 30. So that means 30 days after this, in other words, basically the end of July. And what you'll notice is, I did my best to verify this data, is that most of the time since 2017, if Bitcoin is up in July, it winds up, generally staying up and winds up above where it closed on June 30th, 7 out of 8 times. So, it was up in July of last year and it wound up at the end of September. And of course, the top was October, right? But the same happened in 2024. It wasn't exciting, but it wasn't awful. 2022 is the only exception, right? It was up in July and wound up negative by the time you got to September. But are we really in a 2022 environment? We're not in a leveraged system. We've got one leveraged player. Not the same thing. Not at all. And then in 2020 and 2021, you had big Julys and it held. And then 2017, of course, you had crazy banana pants with a great July and then, a massive buying climax that occurred after that. So what I'm trying to do is paint a picture of if they squeeze everybody out in July and everybody remains negative, there's the possibility that they could hold it up before they drop it again. And, you know, you have to sort of expect that, because NASDAQ is ridiculous, right? I mean, NASDAQ, after the 250th anniversary of America in July and all that, maybe there's some sort of like, hey, maybe this is stupid. Maybe we bought too much NASDAQ and too much semis and not enough Bitcoin and not enough gold. Because they're trying to tell you out the wazoo that this dollar, what they call the dollar debasement trade, is over. And I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. So you have Kevin Warsh, the new Fed chairman, today speaking at some conference in Europe. You know, he doesn't want to talk about rate hikes. He doesn't want to talk about forward guidance. He just said, we're not that happy with inflation. We're not happy. And my comment is, well, what do you expect him to say? We expect him to say, oh, inflation? Bah, we don't care about that. We'll have our new inflation target be 5%. Yeah, let's leave it at 5%. No. He's not going to say that. He's not going to say that at all. Somebody says, are you taking orders from the orange man? Are you still independent? Well, what's he supposed to say? Oh, yeah, I'm going to do whatever the orange man tells me to do. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're not the Federal Reserve. We're the DJT central bank now. Didn't I tell you that? They're not going to say that. They're not going to say that at all. He talked about revising their economic data and things like that. Everybody interprets this as super hawkish. I think the guy from Stormrake made an excellent point, you know, because they got smart research over there. He's like, you know what they're doing? They're pumping the dollar before they dump it on your head. They're going to dump the dollar on your head, and they're going to have to print to do these deficits, and they're just talking it up before they unload. And I'm like, that's interesting, because you know what? If you look at the dollar index chart, for all this hoopla, for all this talk, okay, yeah, it did hit a support point. Yeah, it could go higher. But Lux Algo put a big resistance shelf up here. And yeah, you could have problems with the yen, and there's all kinds of stuff about the dollar. But you know what? If the dollar index can't take out this like 101, 102 level, there's resistance there. And I'm like, you know, this is just like the fade everybody stream. Oh, Warsh is hawkish. Fade it. The dollar's going up. Fade it. Bitcoin's going to 50. Fade it. Silver's going down. Fade it. This is the 21-month moving average. How do you know this wasn't just a simple normalization where silver gravitates back to a long-term mean? Has anybody ever heard of mean reversion? Yeah, the dollar debasement trade is dead. You know, that was in Bloomberg, by the way. Because, you know, we want to trade with Bloomberg and B+ journalism majors. You know, we don't want to trade economics, markets, or even a little contrarian theory. We want to trade with journalists. Oh my God, please. We absolutely do not want to do that at all. So if you start looking at this and you're going, did people take this too far? Like, you know, it looks like they took it too far in MicroStrategy, because MicroStrategy looks like it's headed for its own little mean reversion back to the 21-day moving average. This can be total garbage, right? But if you go from 96 to 112, that hurts people. That hurts people. And, you know, this thing is crazy. STRC is already there. So STRC already did a mean reversion and came back to its 21-day moving average after retail absolutely heaved it down here with that red on red on the oscillator matrix. You know, and while I'm here, you know, Bitcoin ETF holds the discount zone, holds a big bottom of an alligator mouth formation, you know, you would love to see the Bitcoin ETF get back above, say, 35. It's currently at 34. You'd love to see that, but, you know, it's in this support zone. And I'm asking myself, you know, is this the end of the world? It's not great. You know, there's this 34, 35 area that they have to like overcome. But is this really that bad? I mean, is it that bad? You know, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to be suspicious, to be like, yeah, you know, to give Bitcoin the stink eye. But this whole narrative, like the Saylor narrative, could be overdone. Could be overdone. It doesn't mean it's not a problem. It just may not be a problem in July. What happens if this whole dollar debasement trade winds up wrong and you wind up with a rally in silver and Bitcoin? In other words, if everybody just got done puking the Bitcoin ETF, what happens after you have forced selling? Well, normally things can just levitate up. Now, is it levitating up for one day, or is it going to levitate up for 1 month? Who thinks it's going to levitate up for 1 month? Nobody. Nobody. You know, but there's Solana to consider and Stellar, right? So, you know, while you were scared, Wall Street moved in. You know, everybody's upset. Bitcoin's down 50%. Fear greed's at 12. You know, Bitcoin was down 18% in June. You know, it's winter in price, but the plumbing says spring. You know, you got to think about this tokenized assets thing. You know, BlackRock's entity for tokenized assets is going public. Like the Saylor narrative drowned all that out. All of that out. You know, Stellar will look at the chart, but, you know, basically it was left for dead. It's still down 80% from its high. Okay. But the network has never been healthier. DTCC picked up Stellar. That's the entity that clears securities. You know, securities aren't like crypto. They don't go from one person to another directly. They go through DTCC first. All right. So, you know, this could be the #1 public blockchain. It doesn't go live until 2027. You know, they have 5 billion in stablecoins running on Stellar. Okay. They have 2 billion in real world assets. MasterCard wants in with Stellar. Okay. Now you can't get stupid because this $114 trillion headline about what goes through DTCC is a little much. Nothing goes live until 2027. You know, heavy usage of the network doesn't mean anybody has to buy the token for now. For now, right? Like nobody needed Ethereum. There was no killer app for ETH in 2019 at the bottom. There's never a use case for anything at a bottom. Like Solana. Stellar is the promise. Solana is the proof. Okay, the market has already moved here. $200 million in tokenized stock traded on Solana dexes in a single day. Tesla, Circle, Google, etc. 95 to 99% of all tokenized stock trading is being done on Solana. It's incredible. Semis go up, NASDAQ goes up, Meta's up 11% today on their little narrative. It's all being done on Solana. And no one cares, right? 3 billion in real world assets over here, right? 16 billion in stable coins. Okay. 650 billion moved in a month on Solana, on stable coins. Like, I mean, there was something released that they want, you know, Circle or USDC to be used by machines. What blockchain are they going to run that on? They're probably going to run it on Solana. You know, Solana ETF has gotten some inflows, and Visa and Western Union plugged in as validators on Solana. And the Solana chart wasn't terrible on the way down. It wasn't. We'll look at it. Okay, so you have speculation, you have bag holders been getting out, and you have this narrative has been around and no one's cared. Now, is there any reason to like Bitcoin? Any? All right, so it's like bend but don't break. You know, MicroStrategy jumped up when they announced they'll sell if they have to. He didn't get liquidated, and he's not going to get liquidated. He's still got 800,000 Bitcoin. He just may have to shave off some, but he's not going to get liquidated. Now, STRC or mstr holders could get hosed, but is that going to happen now? Right? He broke the famous never sell pledge, and, you know, some analysts think, you know, Bitcoin's going massively lower. It could, but is it going lower this month? Is it going this month? You know, July is a new quarter reset. Actually, the massive outflows in the ETF kind of stopped before the end of June. And this is the whole, you know, July is Bitcoin's quiet comeback month. You know, these are July returns. Is July a good GAN month? Potentially, yes. Yes. I mean, it's a question of timing, of course. Don't stream the price, stream the plumbing, which is what we talk about all day, every day in the YouTube member area. What are, like, here are our topics. What are the AI rails, the infrastructure rails? What about liquidity rails? That's kind of what we're talking about with Solana. Do you think it's just Stellar and Solana? No. We've been finding these small dexes for Big Daddy. We were talking about, you know, we talk about Hyperliquid. I mean, Hyperliquid today is sitting on a big trend line. And Hyperliquid has corrected as the market has corrected or taken a breather. But is there a big reason to get negative on this? I don't know, man. I don't think so. You know, Lux Algo's drawing this trend line. You can tell people know it's there. People know it's there, right? It's here. Look at these wicks. Every time Hyperliquid goes down, somebody is there, and somebody was there today. You know, if this thing breaks out on the upside, I mean, this looks like your classic, you know, flag and flagpole. And the way this works is, I mean, they say flags fly at half mast, meaning here's the flagpole, here's the flag, and then there could be another move of this distance higher if it breaks out at 72. So, you know, I don't want to go crazy. I don't want to go like epically pie in the sky. But I mean, there's stuff going on here that's more positive than you think it is when the media and dumb money is all negative. That's the contrarian thing. Now, does that last a day? Looks like it's going to stick for today. Is it going to last a month? Well, it certainly could. Because one thing that's kind of funny is that Bitcoin is up 2% today, but all of the miners that pivoted towards AI, right? Because there's a shortage of compute. There's not enough compute. So let's all switch our Bitcoin mining equipment over to AI. Let's rent out our equipment. Okay. So HUT is down 10%. Okay. WGMI, WAGMI, is down 6%. IRIN is down 5%. SpaceX is down 7%. Right? They lease their computer power out. What happens if there's no shortage of computer power? Well, obviously, the whole world's got the trade wrong. They're all wrong, or they're just all piled in to an old narrative. In other words, everybody did the wrong trade. They sold Bitcoin, they sold metals, they bought semis. Everybody gave up on Bitcoin. Everything was, oh my God, it's going to all fall apart. And guess what? Look at this. I just saw this. Holy cow. You got Coinbase's stock, because again, this is tied in with Circle and all that. You got Coinbase's stock a moving here. This is above the 21-day moving average, up 10%, just coming out of the discount zone. I'm like, hey now, how about a little rally in Coinbase up to the 200-day moving average at 213? I mean, these things are really stretched out. And this is an absolute monster give up trade here. I mean, Lux Algo's not drawing it, but you had a new low in price and no new low in the stochastics indicator, or the little oscillator indicator for Lux Algo. I mean, this could go up a lot just on technicals. So, just because the media jumps on a narrative, right? Like the media jumps on the Fed narrative, retail is in love with, an older trade. Everybody gave up on Bitcoin. Everybody's given up on crypto to the point where everyone is just so depressed. Right. And then, if you want to get undepressed, because this was okay yesterday, right? It's Solana. Now, okay, yes, there's resistance at 85, but Solana broke out of a Lux Algo like downward sloping box. Then it broke a Lux Algo trend line. It also broke the 21-day moving average. That's the green wavy line. And then the next thing you know, yesterday, Solana makes a return move to the 21-day moving average, which is normal. You break out, you come back down, you retest whatever you broke out from, which is the trend line and the 21-day. And then today, boom, up 5%. I'm like, I looked at this. I was looking at this yesterday. I'm like, if this holds, they're going to squeeze everybody out. They're going to force everyone out of shorts. And then you have this like meta thing with, oh yeah, by the way, right? I mean, that's what you need. Crypto needs a change in perception. Stellar, which has a Lux Algo buy signal today, after hitting Lux Algo support and hammering on it for 4 days, it never went down. Stellar is now taking out the 21-day and the 200-day moving average. Now, it wicked up and it's come back down, and that's typical. Sometimes they do the breakout and the retest all in the same day. All in the same day. So, I mean, you got XRP oversold. You got Solana breaking out. You got Stellar with room to go to 22 cents and possibly 30, because that's where the premium zone is. Excuse me, why are we negative all this again? Why are we negative? I don't understand. Like Arrow. Okay, everyone's asking me, what about base? Is all this dead? Nothing is dead. They're trading stonks. They're trading stonks on the blockchain. And what's next? Well, most likely meme coins generated by actual AI agents, because, this is happening. Amazon has said we want autonomous AI agents doing transactions with Circle. Now, that doesn't help Bitcoin or Arrow right now. But, I mean, what is going to happen when these machines start coming in? And we've been talking about this all day, every day for months in the YouTube member area. And we're going to be talking more about it in Patreon, because I'm getting ready to load all of the altcoin work that we've been doing, consolidate it, and put it in reports, as well as do some 6th Street Crypto podcasts about all the altcoins that are out there. There are altcoins out there in this space. DEXs, real world asset plays. Why are we selling? Why are we all bearish when all of these like infrastructure plays, that's what Toby calls them, all these infrastructure plays are holding and breaking out? In other words, this is the 200-day moving average in Arrow. right? Why are we negative? I don't understand it. And then, of course, if you want to have a laugh, I didn't even look at it, but, like ETH is running into resistance. ETH just can't get going, but ETH is sitting on its discount zone. And, to have a positive July, you're going to need participation from ETH. You are. And then there's this very ironic little indicator, which, I don't know if anyone cares, but there's Bitcoin Cash, which was clearly a leading indicator of what was going to happen to Bitcoin. Because, I mean, this thing was going down from the beginning of May, and it was going straight down. Like Bitcoin Cash has apparently lost its whole narrative. I mean, I don't know what's faster, Bitcoin Lightning or Bitcoin Cash, but I don't know, man. Roger Ver got Bitcoin Cash running in a whole area of Spain. The 200-day moving average, like if it reverts to its mean or its kind of long-term average, that's 402. It's currently trading at 213. That's crazy banana pants. And it's up 7% today. And if it's going, theoretically, if it can go to 402, who cares about 7%? Who cares if Bitcoin is up 3%? It's above 60, right? Which is a big deal psychologically and on quarterly charts. People probably thought they were going to get to buy at 52. I had YouTube suggest a thumbnail with my face and 52K on it, and I went with something else. I probably could have gotten more clicks on 52K, but I don't really believe in 52K, at least not right now, unless you have a Saylor or a NASDAQ problem. I mean, if you have a NASDAQ problem, you have a 50K situation, right? Because, NASDAQ is just, it's just ridiculous, right? It's up only. It can't go down. It's probably protected by the plunge protection team, right? Because the one thing that Kevin Warsh doesn't say is that, the Fed wants a strong position, a strong dollar, and a strong stock market because, every time some statistics comes out that is negative, like it's still holding above the 21-day moving average despite the meta news. Every time the orange man gets asked anything like the $1 billion in grift he took everybody in crypto for at the top, he's like, yeah, of course I made money. The stock market's going up. That's the answer to everything, which is fine, right? They do not want the stock market down in the 250th anniversary of America. Fine. And we won't worry about that until we have to worry about that, because we will have to worry about it because this is delusional. But they're going to hold it up for now, most likely. Because, this meta news is, to me, is mega bearish. It's mega bearish, right? Like all these chip companies, I mean, we'll see. Like the biggest poster child for this so far has been Micron. Killer earnings, killer guidance. They're gapping it up. They bought every single dip. Retail buys every dip. Now it's gapped lower and is on the 21-day moving average. So we'll see. Like buying this, like this stock was at 211 at Thanksgiving last year. It's now at 1,200. Okay. So there's obviously been some good news. They're obviously buying chips at an incredible pace. I get it. But is that the right trade to do now? Do you want to do it now? Do you want to buy a move from 200 to 1,200, or do you want to buy Bitcoin down 50%? Or Solana? Solana's destroyed. Like, how can you love Micron and NASDAQ and hate Stellar, Solana, XRP, and you know what? Even ETH. How can you hate these coins? It's the same market moving on different rails. And all of a sudden, like I said, crypto's no good. Crypto's no good when you have everybody, downgrading crypto, downgrading their upside targets, downgrading everything. I mean, normally that's when you go the other way. When everybody revises their targets lower. And, don't get me wrong. If you have a NASDAQ problem and a Michael Saylor problem, this can go lower, right? Particularly since, the general public has been ingrained to FOMO into NASDAQ, and institutions puked the Bitcoin ETF. However, that flips around. In other words, everybody who just puked the Bitcoin ETF may wind up FOMOing back in. No one has discussed this, particularly during thin summer months. There's a saying at Wall Street, never short the quiet market. So maybe Bitcoin falls quiet at 60. Maybe we can use our imagination and be somewhat positive. Maybe if there is a larger problem, maybe it's like an end of September, October problem. A lot of people think, the bear market cycle, the 4-year cycle problem ends in October. Okay, well, how does it end in October? Do we just all genuflect and have it go up? Or is there some kind of event? The event may not happen now. And if that's the case, then they can just squeeze everybody out every day during July and August, when everybody's watching the World Cup, when everybody's on vacation. July 4th is known for big moves. I mean, Kevin Warsh has said everything he's going to say. They've slammed gold. They bought the dollar. They FOMO'd into semiconductors. We had a Michael Saylor crisis. Bitcoin's still above 60. So if you're looking for 50, what bearish catalyst are you going to get during July and August? What are you going to get? I don't know. I'm thinking that if it didn't crack off the Saylor news, now that may not be an issue until later. Okay. Now, I've been so crazy banana pants over the last 2 days that I have not welcomed who's here. So let's do that. We have Bull Runner and Zapatis, who is saying, thanks a lot for all your work. Sir, I appreciate you because you are always on this stream. And I appreciate getting thanked for what we do here. And I appreciate all the business from the Spartans and from the YouTube member area, because I'm telling you right now, Toby's going to be right, that you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be kicking yourself that you did not get more involved. Put out a short video with her saying that. No one watched it. You'll be sorry. You'll be sorry, especially when this thing turns around. Now, July, August may be a temporary turnaround. And, if there's like a V bottom, because, that's also worth bringing up. And then I'll welcome Shelly, the one-woman hedge fund, in a moment. But if we go to IBIT, right, let's just go back to the Bitcoin ETF. Okay. So everyone is always talking about how Bitcoin behaves like a stock now. Okay. Well, generally speaking, stocks make rounding tops and they make V bottoms. Now, is the V bottom now or is the V bottom in October? Well, I don't know. We'll find out. But if there is a problem in October, one of the things that Toby said, and I think Toby is right, that even if it does go down a lot, it will not stay down. In other words, if there's some sort of like Michael Saylor trade or some sort of panic about NASDAQ, it won't last. Bitcoin will go down and then it'll turn around and go straight back up again. And who knows, this might be the V bottom. Boy, wouldn't that be something else? Wouldn't that be something? But, either way, right? Like, do you care if Bitcoin's going to 250? Do you really care if you pay 60 or 50? Think about it. Stormrake said the same thing. If you bought 60, 50, and 45 on the way down, it's the same thing as waiting for Bitcoin to go to 50, 45, and then buying it at 45 at the low, and then buying 50 and 60 on the way up. It's the same thing. If you think about it that way, is 50 so bad? Is 45 so bad? Yeah, it's bad, but your alt bags will get wrecked. But we're establishing that everyone's narrative is wrong. The NASDAQ narrative is wrong. The semiconductor narrative is wrong. The dollar narrative is wrong. Warsh's perception or whatever that he's super hawkish, wrong. That's a lot of wrong. PWB, good evening. Gary from Aloha, from Hawaii. The Jeski, welcome. All YouTube members, John 316, blessings to you, sir. Please hit the like button. Shelly's like, it's hard to stay positive. Well, Shelly, we put this stream in mind with our members, you and Big Daddy Crypto, right? It's like, hey, is this so bad? Maybe not. Maybe not now. Live it. It's not effed forever. You're right. It's not. It's not. Right? Stevie says time to go up. Right? But when? I don't know. How about now? Yav is here. Welcome with his XRP emoji. We have to get the we have to get the lizard emoji going. We promised that. We got to figure that out. Okay. Shizzy is saying XRP Ledger was not made for any coins to run on it without off-chain indexers. Okay, and that's just reminding us that Ripple's got some work to do if they want to promote their coin. I mean, they have a company behind it. If they can't figure this out, they have a CEO and they can't figure it out, then the market will send them a message. Crypto infographic. The Fed talked this morning and was dovish. Yeah, there's nothing hawkish about Warsh. If anything, he's trying to be neutral, right? NASDAQ overbought. BlackRock is not your friend, right? It's like, crypto infographic has been trying to tell his friends that, this Warsh thing is overdone, right? Gary the Holder, a member, is stacking Chainlink. Yeah. Trading billions on tokenized stocks, but no one wants Chainlink. That crypto infographic said AI winter soon. Oh my God. Because they're going to have a winter. They're going to overbuild. They may have done it already. They may have FOMO'd into chips. They may have FOMO'd into computing power. And it's a lot cheaper than anyone thinks. And all that money, by the way, just like the railroad boom, all the money that gets spent building railroad tracks doesn't come back, doesn't get a return, or doesn't come back at all. Like, hey, let's borrow some money and build railroad tracks. Well, wait a minute. There's 4 or 5 people building the same tracks to the same place. There's going to be 1 winner or 2 winners, but there's not going to be 6 winners. I want to say that there was 20 publicly traded car companies in 1929. How many car companies you got today? 3, 4? You know what I'm saying? Like, not everybody makes it. Not everybody wins. Yeah. The guy selling the picks and shovels, as they say, they win. That's Micron and NVIDIA and all those players. They've already won. But what's next? Once they overbuild, which they've basically done already. We've already talked about Oracle stock. We've already talked about Meta leasing out computing power. We've talked about blah, 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 blah. This is happening. And Zero Hedge is quoting the guy who runs trading at Goldman saying, watch out if compute is actually cheaper than you think it is. Odd Dark is here, a member. What's up? What's happening? A Spartan, right? Definitely the AI trade is too overcrowded, and all that debt is a concern. In other words, here's what's funny. And I'm not going to lie. I ran with the story. I ran with it. But everyone's all worried about what Michael Saylor owns or his debt. And all these AI companies like Oracle and Meta you know, they not only do they got debt, but they're basically hiding it. Like nobody can hide the Oracle debacle. But you know, they got off balance sheet debt. You know, Nvidia's accounting is questionable. You know, like instead of selling chips, they're like leasing chips. You know, like they offer customers promotions to buy chips when supposedly there's infinite demand. Why do you need promotions to sell chips if the demand is infinite? You know what I'm saying? Like these are old stories, right? But you know, it's not like this trade is not being done. This trade is happening. They're just all doing it to one company, and that's Oracle, right? Oracle borrows a bunch of money, down. Oracle rallies to the equilibrium zone, down. You know, Oracle on its discount. So now who knows if Oracle turns around, but you know, if you plot if you plot QQQ against Oracle, like Oracle's going one way, QQQ's going the other. That's NASDAQ 100. Oh, and by the way, the entire mutual fund world has to sell these big tech stocks to make room for SpaceX. In other words, if you're a mutual fund and you have, let's just say $100 worth of NASDAQ 100, you have to kick out, you know, $2 of every big tech stock to make room for the fact that, you know, you got to buy $4 or $5 worth of SpaceX. That's how that works. You have these $1 trillion IPOs, and then all of a sudden they have to, like, you know, these mutual funds have to like rearrange how they do things. And that means they have to sell stuff to make room for SpaceX. It's one of the reasons why OpenAI and Anthropic probably can't go public, because it's going to result in mass selling. Now, if you put $3 trillion companies in a new index, they got to sell everything else to buy those stocks. And this is all a part of this like idiotic narrative, like $1 trillion IPOs. The story is wrong. They're just wrong. And everybody has done the same trade. So, you know, if everyone's doing the same thing and they're wrong, you know, like let's do something laughable. Let's do some on the fly live TA of gold stocks. Let's have a laugh. Warren Buffett likes gold stocks better than gold. Huh. And what do we have here? XAU got, this is an index of gold stocks. So XAU got within shouting different distance of a 50% retracement of the whole move. Oh, and what do you know? Like the parabolic move, it retraced 62%. Huh. So you have to wonder, as they FOMO into chips, whether or not gold stocks and Bitcoin could come back. You know, they took this thing down to, you know, kind of like a prior high zone. Who knows? All I know is I want to sell what they all bought and buy what they all sold. That's what I want to do. I just want to go the other way on all these clowns. Because if you get a squeeze, like if this, don't short the quiet market. This is the final point. Don't short the quiet market applies over the U.S. July 4th holiday. Right? And I can't believe that the Orange Man wants risk assets to go down on the 250th anniversary of America. So if they pump NASDAQ and NASDAQ is okay, that leaves a little room for a Bitcoin shock. You know, Saylor news may dry up, all the negativity, that's all done. He'll sell if he has to, but he didn't. He didn't have to today. So Shelly is holding XRP, Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, Tau, Virtuals, Arrow, Akash, and Chainlink, and just waiting. Smash Satoshi says, welcome. Oracle and Microsoft make no sense. Mechanic says crypto has been down only since October. Enough is enough, dude. I'm absolutely with you. Not only has crypto been down only, but we've had our nose rubbed in it because other risk assets have been up only. Time for a little crypto payback, especially in a quiet market. NASDAQ doesn't have to go down. Matter of fact, if NASDAQ did nothing, that would actually help Bitcoin smoke to the upside. And if it's not Bitcoin, as we said, it could be alts. It could be the big alts involved in this Wall Street trade. How funny. You know, Wall Street was picking on Saylor. Wall Street sold the Bitcoin ETF. And then, but quietly, Wall Street underneath was using Solana and Stellar, like the headline said. While you were upset, Wall Street just moved in. Smart money hoovered it all up while everybody was upset. Most likely, smart money sold semiconductor stocks to retail at the top. For crypto, don't short the quiet market. That is the market update for today. We will see if our one day of being positive bears any fruit. We will see you tomorrow.